Hi, Mark here. It is Wednesday, December the 10th, going on 9 a.m. Eastern, going on 2 p.m. GMT. And let's have a look at the US dollar and how it's performing now that the US session is underway. Bearing in mind we have the Fed announcement at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, which is 7 p.m. GMT, calling for a consensus, should I say, 25 basis point cut. Last time we got that in the first of the cuts this year in September, you can see the US dollar strengthened following the cut, and then the most recent in October, also the US dollar strengthened following the cut. This time, market US dollar index is sideways. We'll see whether we get the same reaction where the US dollar does rally following the cut. Bear in mind that the last time they cut, it was a what they called a hawkish cut with some very hawkish comments from the Fed chairman Powell at the time. We'll see the way that plays out following today's announcement. But for now, pretty much sideways, waiting for the announcement. 98.64 is support and 98.89 is the resistance level. Let's have a look how the majors are shaping up this morning. Firstly, the euro against the US was stronger. Buying euro, selling US up to resistance at 116.58. Euro gave up some of those gains. Alternatively, US dollar did fight back, now sitting at 116.40, and it got support at 116.21. Buyers will be looking up at this resistance level. You can see that buyers haven't been able to maintain much above the 1640 level so far this week. We'll see whether that changes today. And sellers, by the same token, haven't really been able to maintain below the 1620 area and below and to get down to the 116 level. So let's see how that plays out going into the US session now and going forward looking to the Fed announcement. Let's have a look at the pound. Pound strengthening against a weak US dollar for now. I've got support at 132.97. I've got resistance 133.29, and that's being tested right now. Buyers will look to break above this intraday resistance, perhaps looking at yesterday's high, 133.56, and then all the way up to 133.80. Sellers of pound, buyers of US. If the US does put in a fight back or bounces back against the pound, support sitting at 132.97. Sellers will be looking down at to test and get below that 133 level. Let's have a look at the US against the yen. We've had three very strong days. US dollar has been strong against a weak yen. Coming off a little bit today, you can see that. Start of possibly a double top formation. 156.95 yesterday's high, 156.93 today's high. So the start of a double top, which is a strong reversal sign, but there's a long way to go. US session has just started, and I think that'll all depend on the direction that the US dollar takes following the Fed announcement. But for now, I've got resistance at 156.93. That's the level buyers, US dollar buyers will be looking to test or break above. And today's intraday support at 156.56. And that's the level that sellers are testing right now. And we'll be looking down at the 156 or lower. And then let's have a look at the Canadian. In 45 minutes, we got the Bank of Canada interest rate decision as well. Consensus is for rates to be kept on hold. And if that is the case, might not be that much activity, and the aftermath might be somewhat muted. Anything other than what's expected, that would, as is always the case, if the decision is not what's been called for in the consensus or any kind of dissent in making the decision, that could make the market behave erratically. But for now, we're seeing weak US dollar, strong Canadian. US dollar hasn't been able to fight back so far this week, and not today either. I've got support at 138.36. I've got resistance at 138.59. That's a really tight 20 plus pip range. There's not much yet going into the announcement. Buyers of US dollar and sellers of Canadian. So if the Canadian does weaken following the announcement, buyers will be looking up at this 138.59 and looking up perhaps to the 139 level. Should we see US dollar weakness and Canadian strength following the announcement, sellers of US buyers of Canadian will be looking below this 138.36 and all the way down at the 138 level. We've got levels to work with, a lot to coming up today with our two uh, interest rate decisions. Keep that discipline. Watch for our levels as they stand. And bear in mind, the immediate response to the decisions could be a little bit different from the trend that sets in the days to come towards the end of the year. Keep that discipline and watch on the shorter time frames to get a feel. I will see you at the end of the day session. Good trading.